Good morning, and thank you so much for attending the first annual Past Presidents Leadership Forum. And I want to welcome you all from all over the country to our forum. This forum is being presented by the past presidents. For many years, the past presidents and others have noticed that many of you come to the NMA each year. And if you're anything like me, I came after I had finished all my training. And I was inspired by what I experienced and interacting with other black doctors, motivated by the discussions relevant to me and my patients, blown away by all the science that we hear each year at this convention, and really impressed by the ability of my colleagues to party. You know, I came from Texas. I thought we had prime real estate on that one, but when I got here, I found out that we had a lot to learn in that area. But immediately I wanted to be involved after that very first meeting, so I went back to San Francisco and joined the local John Hill Medical Society. San Francisco and Oakland are an enigma. If you look right or left, as you head from the airport to the wine country or to the little cable cars, there are a lot of people of color on either side of that freeway who are in very poor health. As you walk and stroll through Golden Gate Park, there are a lot of people in that area who see that park as their home. And a lot of African Americans, if you meander across the Golden Gate Bridge and just look east, you'll see a number of African Americans living in zip codes where life expectancy is as much as 7 years less than people living in other zip codes in Oakland. But I looked around for a way to help and a way to give my medical school essay. You know that essay that says you're going to practice for nothing in the urban inner city areas and take care of people for tomatoes and strawberries as you try to get in medical school. I found the NMA Society's John Hill and Sinclair Miller working feverishly and creatively on the problems of health equity. I joined, invested my ideas, and was rewarded 50 to 100 times over with what we were able to accomplish through the years. So today, the past presidents will present the Leadership Forum because we know the problems. We share a common bond of wearing the medal of leadership, and we, to a person, the joy and satisfaction of representing one of the most respected health organizations in the world. But most importantly, we want you to consider taking a larger role in the struggle to improve health of black people and to ensure the struggle for health. This is to be an interactive and informal session, and on this stage will be among America's finest and famous physicians who happen to be presidents of the National Medical Association. They will reflect on their leadership and let you know how the NMA is structured and present a peek into local society organization and operation. Through this is our hope that we'll be able to motivate those of you who are not involved in leadership to get involved, and in some cases those of you who are involved to get more involved. For most of the session, we will not introduce all the speakers and the participants. Their bios are in your program. But we must introduce to you the first two speakers, Dr. Vivian Penn and the 118th President of the National Medical Association, Dr. Doris Brown. Dr. Penn has a challenging resume and CV, so many paragraphs would not do.
You don't need to do that. We're going to go talk about NMA.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing that.
Okay.
I'm doing something else.
All right. I'm being put in my place.
She was the inaugural full-time director of the Office of Research on Women's Health at the National Institutes of Health and was the associate director for research on women's health in NIH position she held from 1981 until her retirement in 2011. And hardly a retirement, but her retirement from there. Since her retirement, she's been named as a senior scientist emerita at the NIH Fogarty International Center, the NIH. She served on the faculty of the Harvard Medical School, Tufts Medical School of Medicine, and Howard University, where she was professor, chair of pathology. She's a degree in Wellesley College and received her MD degree from the University of Virginia, where they now have a building named in her honor. And she, before completing her postgraduate training in pathology at Mass General Hospital. She's a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and was elected to the National Academy of Medicine in 1995. I present to you one of our most distinguished presidents, Dr. Vivian Penn.
Thank you, Dr. Lenore. And I just want to give you a very brief welcome on behalf of the Past President's Council. I'm actually, I think, the 88th president of the National Medical Association. Is now in the program. It's been a long time, but I think I'm the 88th president and currently the chair of the Past President's Council. And if I can get this pulled up, there we are. And I'm going to be very brief. We want to welcome you to what is the first, thank you. We want to welcome you to what we're calling the first annual Past Presidents Leadership Forum, which means that we hope, depending upon your evaluations today, that this will be the first of many years of a leadership forum which Past Presidents Council will sponsor for this organization, looking to improve it each year. But I think Dr. Mike Lenore, who has organized this, has done a stupendous job in putting this together to bring, to make this first leadership forum effect. If you look at the Constitution and bylaws, which I do constantly, and since you're in a leadership forum, I remind you that that is the guide really to all we do, that I hope that you will keep the Constitution and bylaws, if not in your hip pocket. We have so many compendium and so many editions, but keep the basic facts with you at all times if you are in or pursuing a leadership position. It describes the Past Presidents Council as that composed of past presidents of the National Medical Association, and that our function is to provide this organization with the historic expertise resulting from knowledge and wisdom of the past presidents of the National Medical Association. And that was what I was hinting to Dr. Lenore about. I think that perhaps it's great to see the credentials of the speakers and the leaders of this organization as well as the past presidents. But it perhaps is even more impressive to see the roles and the different functions that past presidents and other leaders have had within this organization. You don't just join today and become president tomorrow. Many have served as past speakers of the House, have served as past chairs of the board, as heads of councils, a member of House committees, as local and state chairs. And I think looking at that history of the leadership throughout the roles of within the organizations is extremely important in thinking about developing and become leaders and eventually becoming a member of the Past Presidents Council. Now, I'm welcoming you on behalf of the past presidents, and you know that anyone who has been a president automatically becomes part of the Past Presidents Council. And this is a photo of our gathering at the last installation of Doris Brown at the last year's convention as president, and these are our past presidents. And actually, of all of these are all of the surviving, meaning living past presidents of the organization. If you go back and look in our installation booklet, we'll give you the list of all past presidents going back to the very first one, Dr. Robert Boyd, from 1895 to 1897, to today, Dr. Doris Brown, and then Dr. Neva Lubin Johnson, who will become president on Tuesday night. But these are all of the living ones, and I wanted to introduce those who are here present. I think we have a wonderful representation. Remember, we're all getting older and we're all getting involved, so to have this many of us still here and active is impressive. And I will ask that they stand as I call their name, going down those who are with us at this convention. Dr. Frank Royal, who also has served as one of the youngest chairs of the Board of Trustees of this organization and our actually most senior past president. I'm standing up here. Dr. Yvonne Chris Smithville, who also happened to have been the first woman chair of the Board of Trustees of this organization. Dr. Randall Morgan from 1996. Dr. Nate Murdoch, is Dr. Murdoch here? Dr. Javette Orgain, Dr. Rodney Hood, Dr. L. Natalie Carroll, Dr. Randall Maxey, did he get here yet? I know he's coming. Dr. Winston Price, Winston's in the front row. Dr. Sandra Gadsden, she's coming, she may not have gotten here yet. Dr. Nelson Adams, who will be leading a panel in a few minutes. Dr. Carolyn Barley Britton, who also served as chair of the board, and I didn't list that for everybody. Dr. Leonard Weather, Jr., is Dr. Weather here yet? He's coming. Dr. Cedric Bright, North Carolina. Where is Cedric? Maybe he's still with the Children of the Walk. Dr. Bailey, Ron Bailey. I heard from Ron, his plane got delayed. I know he's on his way. Dr. Mike Lenore, who is here. Dr. Edith Mitchell. Edith here, she is here at convention. Dr. Alan Williams, Richard Williams, he's on his way. He won't be in until later today. Dr. Doris Brown, our current president, not yet a member of the past President's Council. Where is Doris? She went outside, she's here. And Neva Lubin Johnson, who will be our president as of Tuesday night. So that is an introduction of our presidents. Now, if you look at the Constitution and bylaws, you have to look all the way through to find all the things that the president is expected to do. And actually, what is actually listed in the Constitution and bylaws is extremely brief and really does not begin to cover the functions of the president. It says that the president, you have to give an inaugural address, meaning once you become president, you're supposed to address the organization as well as the House of Delegates to tell them what you have planned for your year as priorities for the organization. You have the right to participate. You're not a trustee, but you have the right to sit as a voting member of the Board of Trustees. It is an important function to appoint all of the councils of the House of Delegates and other committees that are deemed necessary. And I have to point out, and I think we'll hear about that, I can't emphasize more how important those councils are, both in terms of supporting the president, supporting the organization, but also in supporting leadership development roles. I started serving on chair of the Council on Talent Recruitment, which unfortunately no longer exists, and serving on a number of councils, and a number of those that I've seen rise to importance. I remember appointing to councils as their first appointments when I was Speaker of the House of Delegates. And of course, to deliver a report at the end of year of what you have accomplished. But in actuality, the president does much more. Bottom line, the president serves as the public face of the NMA. The president is the spokesperson. No one else should be speaking on behalf of the NMA except the president, unless the president designates someone else to do it, or if it is a request for specific information from a specific group. The president receives and responds to all media, other organizational, public, industry, or any outreach to the NMA, but is free to consult and should consult scientific sections, resolutions of the House of Delegates for NMA policy statements, other officers and House of Delegates councils for information to use to respond to these public requests. The president may and should delegate other officers or members of the NMA to respond on behalf of the organization or in representation at meetings, conferences, government meetings as deemed necessary or appropriate, because the president can't be everything at all places at all times. However, always with the informed leadership of the president. Remember, the president is the face and the public spokesperson of the NMA. The president has many other organization responsibilities during that year of presidency, and so must call upon the years of experience leading to this position in serving in so many other positions within the NMA to be able to function appropriately. And I'm going to end it at that, because with the other panels coming up, you will hear more about the roles of other offices and officers as well as the president. So let me just conclude by saying thank you to Dr. Lenore and to the committee that worked with him for bringing this about. We hope that you will find this a valuable experience, and we will continue to support Dr. Lenore and the organization with taking this leadership forum forward in coming years. Thank you.
I think it's important that you read the duties of the president, because the president has a lot to do. And so often what happens is we see people who have come through our organization who don't appreciate the time and energy that people have spent in order to get to the office of presidency, coming through the locals and the regionals, and then the duties that are put upon the president. I would say from my own personal experience, being the president of NMA is probably one of the most respected positions I've ever held. Wherever you go and you say you're president of the National Medical Association, no matter what we think, what you think of me, once you're the president of the National Medical Association, I can tell you there's a tremendous amount of goodwill out there for you, and so we appreciate those who have served. Our next speaker is one of the hardest working presidents we've ever had, Dr. Doris Brown. She was installed as the 118th president of the NMA on August 1st, 2017 at the National Medical Association's annual convention. She is the president and CEO of Brown & Associates, a certified service disabled veteran and woman-owned health consulting company, which manages diversified health programs addressing the health needs and disparities of national and international populations. Our mission is to provide education, training, disease prevention, consultation, and comprehensive worksite wellness to its clientele. Programs are primarily focused in the areas of breast and prostate cancer, women's health, and other non-communicable diseases. Dr. Brown has worked tirelessly for this organization this year, always asking the question as to what can she do for the National Medical Association. So this time I'd like to introduce Dr. Doris Brown.
Thank you so much. I guess I have perfect timing. I was just speaking with the NIH Fellows. It's a very important part of the program. And again, I want to thank the Past President's Council for inviting me to be a participant in this first leadership forum. I think it is very, very important for individuals that are thinking of leadership roles in the association or leadership roles in general. So, as I take a deep breath and have a sip of water, I've been running up and down the stairs in addition to walking a mile this morning. So, what I really thought was, because all of the tenets of leadership really will be covered in the program by various other speakers, I thought I would take a little different turn and talk about some of the essential habits for making a creative National Medical Association. I do things a little bit outside of the box, but it's all because I love the association and I want to see it grow, and it's important for us to do branding. So of course, you have to understand, first of all, what is the purpose of leadership, and then you want to know some tenets of building that creative organization and making it an environment that is conducive for that particular growth, and you want to have an empowered culture. So I will speak a little bit about some of those things, and what we really want to do is to create and utilize you as the superpowers that's going to make this engine called the National Medical Association grow and become the stellar organization that it is. So you need to know, from my estimation, where we've come from. So what was the reason why the National Medical Association was founded? And then you can ask your questions. Why do we exist? And particularly, I think many of the young people asked that question today in particular. It was like, well, we have all of these other associations and our specialty societies. Why do we need an NMA? You need an NMA today more now than ever before. So you have to look at and address our mission. And as I have looked at the mission and embraced it, it has not changed over the years. Our founders were so astute in putting those words on paper, and we have lived by that for 123 years, and I think it is important for us to live by that for another 125 years. So what you want to do today is to make things happen on behalf of the organization, not personal agendas, not cliques, not what's good for somebody down the street. NMA. Think about that. Think about how you can make it grow and how you can pay it forward to make this the great organization that our founders really built. So it was created on that environment of learned individuals that were dedicated, energetic, and wanting to make a difference. And so I know I see all those faces here in the room, and I see those energetic, intelligent, aggressive, and ready to make a difference faces that are here. So let's step up to the point and go ahead and build on that. And the other important key is that you want to make that a nurturing environment. You have the Past President's Council, who's always here and ready to give you advice and counsel and to help you to grow. And so that is what you need to nurture you so that you can become wonderful, wonderful leaders. And so in that empowerment culture that we're trying to build, and this is just the first step in that direction, and I want to certainly applaud the Planning Committee and the Past President's Council for seeing that this is something that we need, and almost, even though I don't like to dictate, it should almost become mandatory if you're going to hold an office in this organization, that you get to learn some of the basics that's there. Most importantly, we have our bylaws, and it's really listed in terms of the roles of individuals, but it's so critical that you know how to stay in your lane. If one of the things that has been so critical as I've grown in this organization is that we become overly interested and aggressive and we want to do everything. But we have various segments that can do that. So it's just take a deep breath, know what your role is, do it well. Don't jump over into anyone else's lane and try to do their job. You might make suggestions, but do not dictate. So some of those superpowers that you should use in terms of leadership, of course, is having the energy. You need a lot of energy if you're a part of this organization because it's work. It's a labor of love. And so if you're thinking about running for an office, don't do it for the wrong reasons, okay? And maybe because I'm an old school person, I don't care about a resume at this point. I've passed that stage. And I know some people want to have that line written on their resume. That's okay, but don't make it your top priority. It should be down below. You're looking at a major organization, and you want to know, how can I make that organization grow? We should have, and I heard someone give some data in one of the meetings, that in 1924, 27, there were 7,000 members in the organization, 28. And so we've gone up and down and up and down, and now hopefully we're on the rise, and we're going to make that 17,000 or 70,000. What other organization will look out for you when you get in trouble, when you need someone to stroke you, to nurture you, and to provide you with that kind of assistance that you're not going to find anyplace else? I mean, it's good to be in other organizations and to participate in them and to help them with their diversity and inclusion, but always know where you come from and who struggled to get you where you are, and that is the National Medical Association. So we're going to help you with your problem solving. We're going to try to simplify it for you. We want to help you with experimentation if you need to do that. You got to have that true grit to stick together to make this organization grow. And when you look at decision making, it's not this way or that way. You have to be flexible. You have to be inclusive. And so not one size fits all. We have many things. I mean, some people believe in whatever. You need to know that it's okay to agree to disagree and do it in a professional manner and continue to grow. I love a lot of people, but I don't always agree with them, and we smile and I state that I don't agree with that, and that's my opinion, and that's okay, and I'll respect you with your opinion, and then we go on to do what is good for the organization. Don't get stuck in a bind of, I'm angry and I'm not going to do this anymore, so I won't pay my dues this year because so-and-so insulted me and you didn't elect me to be this officer or that officer. Psst. Not important in the scheme of things. So I will leave you with this. We are resilient people. We have suffered through the crisis of America for almost 400 years. We have to reframe and reinvent ourselves and then come back and grow and become stronger. And the National Medical Association has been through many, many times going up and down, and now we're on the way up, and we are going to act up. We are going to grow. We are going to be out there soaring among the stars so that we are the National Medical Association. And I will just say one last thing. I hope you'll join me at the NMA President's Ball. It is a Wakanda ball. We're in the land of Disney. And so it is going to be NMA forever. Thank you.
I'm pretty much the manifestation of everything that Dr. Brown has said. I have been guilty of a lot of things. Ambition is not was one of the things that the NMA has taught me to be humble. I have never lost an election. I mean, even in high school, all the way back to elementary school, I've never lost an election. I remember when I was in Dallas and I was running for the student body president, and I was behind, and I said that I would not propose any radical changes in the curriculum, and everybody stood up and cheered. I won that election. I've lost, the only elections I've ever lost with the National Medical Association. I'll share one quick anecdote with you. We were at the Golden State Medical, those of us, you know, the old California, you know, we have order in our state. We don't have disorder, but I thought that I would be I was the secretary, and I'd be a better president than the president they had. And I could do more things, they had more ideas, I was going to do all that. So I went to a convention in Reno. You remember this, Rodney? I went to a convention in Reno, and I was going to have a little campaign. They stripped me of every single office that I had, and then called me in and told me why they had done it. But it was a great learning experience, and I was able to appreciate the experience I got coming back up. I was dead, coming back up through the ranks. And so consequently, I think every president can tell you the similar story. So that here again, if you're in an organization and you don't succeed initially, and among African-American doctors, black doctors, every one of you has led organizations. Everybody in this room has been president of 10 things. And so not to be president seems to be the kind of a natural motivating force. But I really believe once you recognize all of the work that's being done, it's not like being in the American Academy of this and that. We've all been there. You become a recording secretary, you wake up one morning, you're president. That doesn't always happen here. So consequently, I think you have to be concerned about what your motivations are. And if your motivations are to help African Americans and physicians and the patients that they serve, then I think sticking with the process ultimately will bring you success. But look at what we're talking about today, because that is really the roadmap for you to get to where you think you can make your best contribution. All right, at this time, it's always a good thing to go back and review some highlights of our history. And nobody better to do that than Dr. Rodney Hood. Dr. Hood is going to talk a little bit about the highlights of the history of the National Medical Association.
Michael, I remember that meeting.
NMA history.
Now, Dr. Michael Lenore has given me a tremendous task. I got 5 minutes to talk about 5,000 years of NMA history. Now, I know most of you thought the organization was 123 years old. So, outline. We're first going to briefly talk about the DNA of the NMA, going way back to ancient African medical history. Then we're going to talk about the early 19th century, which I call pre-NMA. And then the late 19th century are the beginnings of what we now see today as the NMA. And then we're going to talk about the 20th century and the 21st century. And since I only have 5 minutes, I'm going to talk fast. So, why is history important? And I love this quote. I remember hearing Kanye West say, "When you hear about slavery for 400 years, that sounds like a choice. We spend too much time on the past and not enough time on the future. There's an old Sumerian proverb, "What became of the black-faced people of summer?" The traveler asked the old man. For ancient records show that the people of summer were black from the land of Cush. What happened to them? Ah, the old man sighed. They lost their history, so they died. Imhotep was a great African physician deified approximately 3,000 years ago. He was the first person known throughout the world that had knowledge and was talked about as being the god of medicine 5,000 years ago. Some 2,500 years ago, before the Greeks laid claim to this event. Today, we at the National Medical Association have adopted the oath of Imhotep, that all NMA presidents and attending physicians during the installation quote, and I'm going to read you the first line. "I swear by this oath in recognition of Imhotep, healer and physician of antiquity, with God as my witness, to uphold these lofty values to the best of my ability." And just to give you some idea, we always think that what we learn today came from the Eurocentric Western culture. This is the actual publication in Edinburgh Medical Journal in England, published in 1884. And Dr. Falcon was a British physician who witnessed cesarean sections being performed by a binaural surgeon in Uganda in 1879 with the use of aseptic techniques, sutures, and hot cautery iron. This operation had obviously been perfected and in use in Africa for centuries in order for the technique and low complication rate to be perfected. This was witnessed by Falcon, and this occurred 30 years before cesarean sections became commonplace in Europe, and when they did, high complication rates. So, in the book, An American Health Dilemma, Dr. Burton Clayton talked about the early 19th century, where they call it the first black health reconstruction. So after emancipation, the Freedmen's Bureau legislation resulted in the creation of unequal but separate health facilities. During this period, we saw an increase in access to health care. Blacks experienced improved health status. And this period ended with the institution of Jim Crow that severely restricted access to health care. During this period, we saw Harlem Hospital in New York City, Cook County Providence Hospital in Chicago, Homer Phillips Hospital in St. Louis, Howard Medical School in the Freedman Hospital, Meharry Medical School and Hubbard Hospital, and many others where black doctors and patients had to receive the services. Separate but unequal. Now, organized medicine played a role in the formation of the National Medical Association. There are 3 time periods where African American physicians attempted to become part of the mainstream. The first, in 1869, 3 well-qualified black physicians, Dr. Augusta, Dr. Purvis, and Dr. Tucker, all 3 were refused membership in the Medical Society of the District of Columbia, which was the all-white AMA chapter in DC. Their rejection was supported by the National American Medical Association. These physicians, therefore, started a separate local chapter that was desegregated, and they called it the National Medical Society. In May of 1870, the 21st annual meeting of the AMA took place in Washington, D.C. This body of the National Medical Society attempted to get credentialed and was denied. Again, there was a convention in 1872, and a similar biracial delegation was denied acceptance to the AMA. And this was on the basis of the chair of the AMA Ethics Committee, Dr. Keller. It was an ethical reason why blacks could not become part of the AMA. As a result of that, the local Medical Chirurgical Society of the District of Columbia was formed in 1884, and this medical society would become one of the first constituents of the National Medical Association. So now in 1895, there was a great meeting in Atlanta, Georgia, the Cotton State and International Expedition in 1895. And if you remember, Booker T. Washington was there where he gave this great speech. There were many African-American health professionals there who came to that convention. One of them was Dr. Robert Boyd, a leading physician in Nashville, Tennessee. He called together a total of 12 health professionals, most of them physicians, some pharmacists, some dentists, and they met at the First Congregational Church in Atlanta, Georgia. This is where the first time the National Medical Association was born. The original purpose of the National Medical Association, and I'm going to read this to you because the more I read it, I say this brother could write. Conceived in no spirit of racial exclusiveness, fostering no ethnic antagonism, but born of the exigencies of the American environment, the National Medical Association has for its object the banding together for mutual cooperation and helpfulness the men and women of African descent who are legally and honorably engaged in the practice of the cognate professions of medicine, surgery, pharmacy, and dentistry. And little note, if you ever notice the difference between the National Medical Association meetings and other professional meetings that you go to, we have family meetings. And not only could we not join the NMA, we could not get into convention centers and hotels. So the early conventions were usually at churches, and the local health professionals house their colleagues to stay with them. And as a result, they would bring their wives and their families. And today, we got one of the most confusing conventions, but one of the most wonderful conventions where we have 5 in 1. We have a business meeting with board and House of Delegates, scientific meeting for CMEs, auxiliary, the children's program, and because at that time, most of the doctors had graduated from Howard and Meharry, it was a social thing. And you still see that happening today. I got 2 minutes. Thank you, madam. This was one of the pioneer founders of the NMA. He was actually the first vice president, a black pioneer by the name of Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, who performed the first operation on the living human being, open heart, in 1893. Lynching was a leading cause of death in the early 21st century. In the 1890s, lynching claimed an average of 139 lives per year. Between 1882 and 1968, an estimated 4,742 blacks met their death at the hands of lynch mobs. Now, why is this important? Because the NMA worked with the NAACP to get the U.S. Congress to pass an anti-lynching law, but was blocked by Congress. In 2005, the U.S. Congress met and gave an apology for this action, and it was attended by James Cameron, who was 91 years old but had survived a lynching in 1930. Now, this slide is personal. In 1957, the NMA joined the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the Urban League, the MedChi Society, now an NMA affiliate, to sponsor the first Imhotep National Conference on Hospital Integration. And subsequently, they had annual meetings, and these meetings were instrumental in disseminating strategies to end segregation and discrimination. And what you see is a letter addressed to Gerald Hood, a cousin of mine in Georgia. And let me read it to you. He applied to Emory University Medical School in 1959. Acknowledgement is made of your letter of July 30th enclosing your application for admission to our School of Medicine. I am sorry I must write you that we are not authorized to consider admission a member of the Negro race. I regret that we cannot help you. Yours truly, L.L. Cligg, Director of Admissions, P.S. We are going to return your $5 application fee. Now, what's ironic about this is some 40 years later, my daughter, Nidra Hood, actually matriculated through Emory in urology. Again, Burton Clayton talked about the second Black Reconstruction period after the 1964 Civil Rights Act was passed. This time, the NMA criticized the AMA, who continually supported racial exclusion in the South. It eventually led to the AMA to begin to allow Black physicians to join many of their societies. And this is an interesting picture. In the 20th century, Dr. Montague Cobb was the president of the NMA in 1964. He was also president of the NAACP. He and the National Medical Association strongly advocated for passage of the civil rights legislation that included Medicare and Medicaid. The NMA was the only professional medical organization that supported this legislation. So on August 14, 1968, President Lyndon B. Johnson attended and spoke at the NMA National Convention held in Houston, Texas, and thanked the NMA for its support. In this picture, you see President Lionel Swan, who was president in 1967, and then James Whitaker, who was president-elect in 1968. In the 21st century, the NMA continues to serve as the conscience of medicine within the U.S. health system. NMA is not afraid to speak truth to power because we always knew that many root causes of health disparities were a measure of health inequities, now referred to as social determinants and not physiological. In the 21st century, he's pulling me off. So these are two accomplishments. There were many more. I call it the National Medical Association inspired unequal treatment confronting racial and ethnic health disparities in healthcare. Now, the reason why I mention this is that our past president, Dr. Gary Dennis, in 1999, spent a lot of time with the Congressional Black Caucus and actually got the Congressional Black Caucus to push legislation to fund the IOM study for approximately $1 million. And then once when this was done, the IOM came to the NMA, asked us for recommendations to sit on that panel. And I think we recommended about 4 or 5, and at least 3 were on that panel. And for those of you who are not familiar, this IOM study's final report concluded that discrimination, racism, and physician bias contributed to differences in health status and outcomes for minority physicians. And oh, by the way, in 2008, the AMA finally apologized for their discrimination. And lastly, this is the signing of the White House when the National Institute for Minority Health and Health Disparities legislation was signed by William Clinton. We were very well represented in the White House, and if you look at this picture, there's at least 4 or 5 folks who were NMA members in this picture. Dr. Frank Royal is far left. And today, the struggle continues. Our current president, Dr. Doris Brown, with the urgency of now, creating a culture of health equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hood. On the way here, I read an article about black holes. And in black holes, time slows down, so your 5 minutes were probably appropriate as we approach the black hole. But thank you very much for a very difficult discussion over a very short period of time. All right, at this time, I'm going to have a discussion about what makes good leadership, led by Dr. Nelson Adams. Dr. Adams, I'll introduce as the panel comes up here. Dr. Adams is the chairman of the board of Meharry Medical College. A 1978 graduate of Meharry, Dr. Adams is a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist. He served on the Meharry board since 2005, and most recently as vice chairman. He's the founder and president and chairman of Access Health Solutions, a managed care company serving 26 counties in Florida. And while they get set, I did want to take a look at some elements. Well, maybe I won't, because somehow my slides have disappeared here. Let's see if I can. I looked up the definition of leadership, and this goes very quickly. Here are two definitions that I found. The best executive, in essence, leader, is one who has a sense enough to pick good men to do what he wants done, and the self-restraint to keep him from meddling with them while they do it. Another definition is when trouble arises and things look bad, there's always one individual who perceives a solution and is willing to take command. Very often, that person is crazy. I have a couple of cartoons here. Here's one that said he's a little old school, but he's got great leadership qualities. Here's another one that says, I'm not sure the congregation appreciates his leadership style. Here's a third one that says, your bad attitude was starting to affect others. That's not much better. And here's one that talks about leadership. I'm going to skip this one to go to my favorite, the emergence of a leader. With all these people going over the cliff, one leader says, whoa, wait a minute. So this time, Dr. Adams, what you say?
Thank you so much, Dr. Lenore. Good afternoon. You know, where there is no vision, the people perish. Let us pause now and say thank you to Dr. Penn, President of the Past President's Council, and Dr. Michael Lenore for having the vision to see the necessity of us coming together and focusing on leadership. Join me in a round of applause for our leaders. Some of you know I'm a Baptist preacher as well. I'm not going to preach, don't worry. But there's a song that some of you may have heard before that I think is appropriate as we tee up this conversation. It's a song that says, a charge to keep I have. The verse that I really like is it says, to serve this present age, my calling to fulfill. In many ways, the reason that we are here today and the reason that we focus on leadership is because it is indeed a calling, but that calling is to serve. Oftentimes we talk about effective leadership. I think you could do a double arrow back and forth between effective leadership and servant leadership. And so today I've got some distinguished colleagues who have a story to tell. It's their story, but you know, the more things change, oftentimes the more they stay the same. Rodney gave us an excellent overview in very short fashion of some of the history, the 5,000-year history, mind you, of the National Medical Association. What is clear is that some of the issues that have existed back yonder still exist. The present age still needs to be served. And it's not about us as individuals, it's about us as a people. There are some things that I think are particularly important and foundational if we look at effective leadership. We all are success-oriented and always want to get A's, but there are 4 C's that I would like to use to frame our discussion this afternoon. Because these 4 C's are foundational. They are required if you are to be an effective leader. The first C is competence. Hello. Competence. If you are not prepared, then you ought not attempt to do that job. The second C is compassion. We are indeed our brothers and sisters' keepers. Third C, commitment. I can assure you that there will be times, leaders, when you will do more and make less, but your commitment will see you through. The last C is the one that we so often struggle with. It's one that I struggle with. Yet I'm reminded that no man, no woman, no organization, no institution is an island. None of us can do it alone. That's collaboration. We need each other. We need other organizations. We need other people. We need one another. With those thoughts in mind, I'd like for our panelists to frame their comments, and each of us have a story. Each of our experiences as president has been a little bit different. I came in at a time when we had an executive director who was also a physician. He was not of African descent. He never saw a microphone that he did not like. And we had a home. We actually had an office building in Washington. We were in a different era. Things were pretty good, but I'm reminded of an African proverb that resonates with me at this time, and hopefully it will resonate with you as I bring this panel forward. Just because the water is calm does not mean that the crocodiles have gone. With that, their perspectives on effective leadership. We will hear first from, to my right, Dr. Carolyn Barley-Britton. Then we will hear from the gentleman to my left, Dr. Ron Bailey, and closing out will be a gentleman, a scholar, the elder statesman of the panel, in fact, Dr. Statesman, could have left the elder off, Dr. Randall Morgan. Please hear them.
So I'll transition and say good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to thank Dr. Lenore for his leadership in bringing this forward. I think this is a very necessary conversation, and as this inaugural gets through, I hope that we will also hear from you those things that will make it better going forward, because not only do you need to hear from people, we need to have a bidirectional conversation. And I think that's where this is going to go in the future. But laying the groundwork for this is really very important. I think looking at myself in leadership in anything was something I did not think I would ever really do. I was actually naturally pretty much a behind-the-scenes person. That's where I like to play. I would help someone to be effective if I thought the project was good, but I really didn't want to be in front. And that's because, unbelievably, I was actually quite shy as a child. I liked to read, I wrote poetry, I read all the time, and I could think 100% of the time. And so being in my own space was really quite comfortable for me. Well, at 16, when I'm leaving home to go to college, my mother looks at me and she says, "Now, Carolyn, you know, you're cute, but you're not that cute. You're smart, but you're not that smart, so you better be nice to people. And let me tell you something else. You've had opportunities. You're going to have opportunities. You're going to an integrated school. I come from a segregated school." She says, "And people are going to look at you, and how you are and how you behave is what they're going to think of black people." And I'm thinking to myself, well, they'd have to be out of their minds. I'm nobody. And she said, and the other thing, you will have opportunities to be a place where we have not been. It is your responsibility to realize that just because we haven't been there doesn't mean that we could not have been there. So when you are there, it is your responsibility to speak for those who could not enter that room. Now, at 16, I really didn't understand what that would mean or how that would play out in my life. And it played out in my life in the NMA, quite by accident. So I think of myself many ways as an accidental leader, because I started out in the medical society, the Susan Smith McKinney Medical Society, and I did all their events for them. I did every event. I did the Honoring of Women event. I wrote the invitations. I did the programming. I put together programs to start to mentor and to network with young students, trying to identify them. I call all the deans. I try to get all the names of all the women graduates. I held an annual luncheon. Even sometimes I even cooked the food. So that's where I started. And then I transitioned through doing local leadership and coming up through doing other things. I came to my first NMA meetings. I walked into a raucous House of Delegates meeting, and I never came back for many years until Yvonne Crisfield ran for president. By that time, I was active in the local medical society. She says, "You've got to join the NMA." And I said, "Oh, I don't think so." I was like the young people today. I understand them. I don't need to join the NMA. And so she finally talks me into it. I joined the NMA. I come to a meeting in Hawaii, and I look around. I go, "This is great." Not only is it great, the seriousness of the physicians here, the abilities that they have, but also the mission statement and our need to be represented could only be fulfilled by the NMA. And that became clear to me. So I began doing exactly what Dr. Penn said. I worked in some of the little-known committees in the House of Delegates. I was on a committee on international affairs. I sat on a task force to identify the areas that the NMA should focus on for disease states. And I remember sitting there with Dusty Sanders, who later became president.
And really a full spirit, I think, of confidence in themselves and their ability. And that really, for the last 2 decades or more, has really spirited me to want to do more and really be more. Sergeant Bright and I were in the car this morning discussing a bit about our past and how much of that has helped both of us, really, in many regards, grow toward not only professional careers that have been successful, but academic careers, I think, in that regard as well. I think another consideration for me in effective leadership has been the opportunity to provide mentorship of others. And I think really has, in many regards, also been a component, I think, of energy determination, almost the gasoline that further propels the mentor to help really foster, I think, much of the energy that it takes to kind of keep going. Really nothing greater, I think, for many of us than to see young persons so we can actually help push them forward, because it helps us remember how much that has actually helped us. I'm someone who owes a tremendous debt of gratitude for those who have helped me in many regards, and I often will say that going to my first NMA meeting in Chicago in Atlanta in '85, but being elected as the secretary of the psychiatry section in 1986 really means a lot. There are a lot of persons who were my senior who elected me to a leadership position 1 year after I actually started. I hope I've actually paid them by putting 20 years of volunteer work into the organization. So since then, but for many of you who may think about going into leadership, I'm very happy to see this full room today recognize that there's a value in the concept of grassroots paying your dues. And very often those dues require not only a few months or years, maybe very often a few decades to really earn your stripes. And I think that putting time in matters. To groups like these who, many I think of our forefathers, really recognize that you put your heart into the NMA and it gives you much more back, I think, many were arguing that you put in. That certainly in many regards has been my experience. I also think, though, that the additional value of the NMA is that it teaches you some things that you just don't get other places. It may in part be what I think Lenore was saying earlier. One caveat that I often will comment on is I'm a 53-year-old black man now with 4 past colonoscopies. And I was at a regional meeting once, I think we were in Jamaica or what have you, and I heard a GI doctor have a discussion about how there was data that implied that African Americans actually have right-sided colon polyps more often than non-African Americans, and that may lead to more colon cancer. And you may not actually hear that type data about this small, unique group different than others. But for a person who's had a family history of colon cancer that's actually led to early mortality, that's actually very unique. That's my entire life in academic settings where mortality issues are discussed regularly. I actually never heard that. I try regularly, at least once a month, to go to an academic lecture that's not about psychiatry, and I've actually never heard that type of information. So I think I've actually learned a great deal about non-psychiatric medicine in the NMA from doctors like yourselves who are not in psychiatry. Another, I think, additional benefit of being in a group like the NMA. So leadership actually, I think, provides an additional degree, I think, of scholarly learning in a setting that you might not get in other settings, including in other academic type venues. I think a fourth value of the NMA for me has been this multi-determinant consideration, I think, of how our organization works. I learned different things at regional meetings and state meetings than what I gained at the national meeting. Regional meetings, I think there's different levels of leadership. I think different levels, I think, of interpersonal engagement. I think the type, I think, of interactions provide a various degree of value of engagement. I think Nelson's point about collaboration in these 4 C's is also enhanced. So I'd encourage all of you to avail yourselves of those different types of settings. They may be structured, I think, differently, and Michael and I think is going to speak about that here at the end. And I think that's done on purpose to provide, I think, a representative degree of value that has, I think, enhanced utility, I think, for all. I made a few points here, this concern regarding respect for persons. And I think that is a point that I think does require some consideration. We all can be type A personalities, persons who I think are not only leaders, but I think highest level leaders in our own settings, in our own homes, in our own work-related settings. And that certainly can lead, I think, to some intensity of value that can be lead to some structured concerns. We've got to find ways to, I think, channel those issues in a more positive and progressive manner in our dealings, legislatively, academically, what have you here, for the best value for the NMA, so that it doesn't become strife-oriented or conflict-laden, but utility-focused. We don't need and value conflict and discord, but we need operational utility to enhance what we offer, I think, for our organization. Some of the difficulties I've experienced, I think that we all have experienced, are to find ways to bring all of that collective energy and to channel it in a more positive way. So I'd encourage all young potential leaders to find ways to aggregate toward, I think, a common theme, a common mean that I think is more positive and more progressive, to think that I think our best days are ahead of us, to recognize that I think what the NMA stands for has more utility, I think, going forward, many more than even in the past, and appreciate that what you have to offer, standing, I think, on the shoulders of giants, is not only essential, important, but I think essential for ourselves, for physicians in the future, but the entirety of our community. I end by saying that I'm also someone who now is a father of a physician. I'm remarkably proud of all 3 of my children, but I do have one child who's just begun her 2nd year of a orthopedic surgery residency. Only one mistake she made in her life, she didn't go into psychiatry, but everybody can go to psychiatry. But I do recognize that now I think differently about this whole issue of medicine. You know, I need her to be educated well. I need her to think from what she hears from other doctors about the utility of what my mother always called, you know, the therapeutic alliance and bedside manner. I need her to make sure she's recognized the utility of being cared for and geared in the right setting or the right place. All key issues that you think about differently, I think, as a parent of a doctor, let alone a doctor who kind of takes care of patients. So these multiple generational roles that I find myself in now at age 53, almost 54, as said and I was discussing today, I think really kind of changes not only the growing of my hair, but also I think in regards to the maturing of my thoughts. And I think all of that, I think, also makes me, in many regards, much more reflective as I see young people in the audience, as I think about how you will be our leaders of the organization, one that I love and care for very dearly, and appreciate, I think, the importance of what you bring to our organization kind of going forward. So thank you for being here today, and I thank you for what you do for our organization in the future. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
Good afternoon. I would like to also thank you all for coming and participating in this maiden voyage of learning about leadership, and specifically with the National Medical Association. Leaders are committed individuals who have a significant interest in and a passion for their organization. Leaders can be volunteers of the organization who choose to serve, or members of the organization who are selected by others in the organization to take a leadership position. And so approximately 35 years ago, I was selected by friends in Chicago who were fairly influential in that they didn't accept no as an answer, to begin leadership in the National Medical Association by taking a committee appointment in the House of Delegates and moving up through that process. And for the last 31 or 2 years, I have served as some form of national leadership with the National Medical Association. But it wasn't that I sought the position, it was that I was sought by others in the organization, and I was encouraged and recognized for some skill set, even though most people in the organization at that time, in 1985 and 86, did not even know my name. So I think it's important for any leader, specifically in the National Medical Association, to think of three things. One is know your personnel. Know the other members of the leadership team. Know the strengths and the weakness of the leadership team. And also to have a shared, exhibit collegiality of the leader with each of those team members, as well as the staff and members of the organization. And so for me, the experience of 6 years of leadership in the House of Delegates really explained to me all that I needed to know about the National Medical Association to become a leader. Because for one thing, I knew all of the members of the House of Delegates, I knew all the committee chairs, I knew all the council chairs, I knew what they were interested in, I knew their strengths and their weaknesses. And by the time I then worked, after I had been at the podium for 4 to 6 years, I was known myself, and I had, I think, a great deal more confidence to be a leader in the National Medical Association. So there are things that we learn by only, first of all, understanding who our personnel, who our team members are. Second, understanding the mission. We've heard about the history of the organization, and a leader must understand the history. But a leader must also be well-versed in the mechanics of the board of the organization. Even if you're involved in the scientific section or leadership as president of the National Medical Association, it's important to understand how the Board of Trustees works and how the organization works from that perspective. And also must have a shared vision of the strategic plan and the vision for that particular organization. And then finally, understanding the mission. The leader must understand the history of the organization. Again, must understand also your own strengths and your own weaknesses, and that's part of competency. Understand how you best gain consensus in the organization. We all gain consensus in a different way, but in order to be an effective leader in the National Medical Association, in order for the association to move forward, we have to have a consensus. And the president and the leaders of the organization, the section chairs, the leaders in the House, it's their responsibility to gain consensus. Be confident in your ability to advocate for your position, even if individuals may not agree with your position. Once your position is thought out well, you should be able to express it and be very confident in that position. And finally, understand how best to express your vision for the success of the organization and to obtain buy-in for the collective organizational vision for the future. So on those three little notes, when I was a student at Howard University, Moses Wharton Young was my professor in neuroanatomy, and he told us that things were always 1, 2, 3. And I learned that if I could just remember 3 things, I would usually be an effective speaker and leader. So I will conclude my remarks with those 3, and wish all of you the best of luck. Thank you.
I want to thank all of our panelists. Time is very short. Let me simply say the take-home here is be prepared. That's the Girl Scout motto. That's the Boy Scout motto. The intersection of preparation and opportunity is where the magic happens. We pray that you be prepared, that opportunities come. May God bless you all. Thanks again to this panel. Let's give them a round of applause. Is that okay?
We're going to go through the rest of our agenda. It's not as long as it looks on paper. And we have 2 very important panels that will conclude our discussion. One is that if you're going to be a leader in the National Medical Association, you should have some, you can take it over there, so you have some concept of how the organization is put together. nobody better than Dr. Winston Price to do that. And our final panel is really going to be one of our most important with Dr. Camille Clare to talk about the locals affiliations, because that's really the entry point where you can make the biggest difference in trying to move in the leadership positions in the NMA. And we do want you to be here for that. So let's go. Which one is it? Okay, go ahead.
So one of the things about being a leader that you have to understand is being flexible. And so I want you to judge me by the content of the moderation I do for this program, not by the color of my clothes. All right? So the important thing you heard in terms of the history, and we're going to move pretty fast, but this is the meats of the leadership forum. Because leadership is not just about getting in front of people and having them follow your mandates. Jonestown had a leader, had a very strong leader, but it wasn't in the best interests of the people that he was directed. And so the leadership in the NMA, based on our wealth of history, as you heard, is about developing and honing your skills. Come on up, Cedric. Honing your skills of integrity, honesty, and collegiality to work with one another. And so what you're going to hear in the meats of this particular presentation is how the House of Delegates, which represents the organization, is structured. You're going to hear about the Constitution and bylaws, which is the basis of how we operate, both from the B-NMA to the A-NMA, according to Dr. Hood, or Reverend Hood. And then also we want to talk about how we deal with infractions within the structure of our organization. So with that as a backdrop, I'd like to call Dr. Javette Orgain. And every organization has a body, so she's going to help you understand what the body of our organization is.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure. As Dr. Price said, and as others have said, our CVs or our bios are in the program, so I believe that there are still some available. The overriding principle that I'd like to deal with is parliamentary authority and parliamentary law. And so the purpose as we come together in meeting is to facilitate orderly transaction of business and to promote cooperation and harmony. And so that's what we do in our meetings, that's what we should do in our House of Delegates, and that's what we should do. So the basic rules of that would be equality of rights. So that means the minority have as many rights as the majority in regards to what we do, although the majority rules. And the right to discussion, the right to talk in a collegial manner, the right to get the information from all of your leaders, from all of your councils, from all of your committees at every level, from your staff and your national office. And that's the overriding principle of what we need to do when we're talking about leadership in general, leadership here at the NMA, and leadership as you go out into your state, local, and regional places, and fairness and good faith in our deliberations. And I think that that's been talked about, but I'm going to name it as fairness and good faith in our deliberations. So in terms of the authorities, you have our organizational chart, but as we talk about our leadership and our authorities, first we have to deal with our state statute and our articles of incorporation. And I guess most of you know that we are incorporated in the state of New Jersey, and I wanted to bring that to your attention again, that we are incorporated in the state of New Jersey. And our Constitution and bylaws, in terms of the hierarchy, it starts with our statute and our articles of incorporation for New Jersey, and we have to deal with that from a legal perspective in terms of what we do. And the next, in terms of the hierarchy, would be our Constitution and bylaws. And again, from a perspective of what you have in your hands as you are in meetings, you should be familiar with the pages of our Constitution and bylaws. And then the next would be our standing rules. And now they've changed over the years, and what is not in our Constitution and bylaws should be in our standing rules, so that the operating and the operations are not in our Constitution and bylaws, but the details go into our standing rules, and we absolutely need to look at them. And our current current Vice Speaker has put that into information that you can go online and see. And the next, and I brought it with me, is Robert's Rules of Order in terms of hierarchy. Robert's Rules of Order. This is the 11th edition, and I'm proud to say that the grandson of Roberts has signed mine. And so from the perspective of what you have, it's Robert's Rules of Order. Be familiar. You see my tabs here. All right, because I'm also a member of the National Association of Parliamentarians. So that is something that you should have in your pocket every time you come to our meetings and every time you participate in the House of Delegates. Next is from the perspective of who, in terms of authority, whoever is in the chair position at the time, the Speaker of our House of Delegates, those are the authorities, and I'm going to run them down again in terms of how we go down. It's our state statute, our articles of incorporation, our constitution and bylaws, our standing rules of order, Robert's Rules of Order, and then the person who is sitting in the chair and the Speaker is the order in which we deal with. And lastly, what I'd like to encourage you, and you know I'm a parliamentary geek, but we always get into our House of Delegates and we do friendly members, and there's no such thing as a friendly amendment. You can vote no, and if it's not right, fix it. So I encourage all of those who might be interested in the whole order in regards to our organization to also consider joining the National Association of Parliamentarians, or to make sure that at every meeting you attend that you are referencing our Constitution and bylaws, you're referencing our rules of order, and you have Robert's Rules of Order in your pocket. And so thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I was asked, where can you find a copy of the Constitution and bylaws in regards to our meeting? If you are not a delegate, certainly it is online. Your membership allows you to go into NMAnet.org and go to the Constitution and bylaws that's online. If you are a delegate, you are going to get a flash drive of the most recent Constitution and bylaws, and I'm stealing everybody's thunder from the House, but you will get a flash drive that has our most recent Constitution and bylaws with its amendments from November of 2017. And I had the pleasure of serving as a consultant to that committee that revised our Constitution and bylaws. And a good hand to Kevin McKinney and the committee that did that in regards to what we needed in an update in our Constitution and bylaws. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Regain. And most organizations get into problems when the members that are in the leadership positions try to operate in an anarchy, in a vacuum, and use old versions of their Constitution and bylaws. And so, Cedric, as a former Speaker of the House and a former past president, can you give us some understanding of the structure here so that people understand as a leader you can't just bypass the directions and goals and interface of how the organization is structured?
So from that perspective, thank you, Winston, and good afternoon to everyone. So thank you for that you're here today. You can see the organizational structure that we have put up here on the screen for your viewing. And basically what we have is a really good schematic that helps you to understand where's the nidus of power. The House of Delegates is our house of power. Everything that the board does has to come before the House of Delegates to be voted on either up or down. So oftentimes there's been a discussion between who was stronger, the chair of the board versus the Speaker of the House of Delegates. In this schematic, it shows that the House of Delegates is supreme and that the board falls under that purview. And so that's one thing I really want folks to truly understand. But the power of this organization rests in your hands as members, and that is in the aspects of participating in our councils and committees. And that is the place where I found my ability to hone my leadership skills and to become worthy of becoming a president, if there is such thing as being worthy of becoming one. And the aspect that I spent a lot of time in the Health Policy and Government Affairs Committee. And in that role, I worked with a lot of our past presidents to discuss issues of the day and how we would craft policies and make responses to issues of the day in a timely manner. And in that way, that helped to prepare me as a president in the aspect that I was well versed in many different topics. So it first starts off of having that ability to first serve. What it is said is that the greatest among you will be a servant of all. And that servant leadership is really where we should all begin, because everybody has a chance to be special, because everybody has a chance to serve. So what I would encourage you to do is first learn to serve. First learn to serve. Whether that's local, whether it's at your state, whether that's in your community, whether that's in your church, whether it's in your PTA, wherever it is, first learn to serve. Learn to navigate and to figure out what is the landscape of the organization for which you're trying to be a part of. And then after you've come to a historical understanding of things, then work on becoming a leader in that organization. It's very tough for you to go straight to the top and you haven't worked at the bottom. And that's really one of the things that I want folks to understand, that it is okay to climb up the ladder of leadership. You don't have to try to go straight to the top. Oftentimes that leads to difficulty in really being an effective leader, because you don't have a base of people that know who you are. So take your time, build your base, work through these committees and councils to help you grow up your leadership ladder, work in your local and your state level, and all of those things will come to fruition one day for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Bright. And most leaders and individuals involved in the organizational structure and governance learn one key behavioral pattern, and that is to praise the people that you're leading when you're having success, and to take the blame when things aren't going well. And so the more you develop that integrity of working with people and giving them the honor for what you're doing, you'll get people coming behind you wanting to work with you and wanting to work on behalf of an organization, and things will progress. But sometimes people fall out of line. Sometimes people even get elected to high office in DC and fall out of line. This is just generalities. We're just talking about leadership, okay? And so there has to be a body that looks at the organizational structure and the Constitution and bylaws, and then serves as a objective body to look at the facts and then pass judgment. So Dr. Natalie Carroll, who runs our council on judicial matters, is going to talk to you about how we handle those who fall out of line, and also issues that just have some discussion necessary. And when your microphone falls out of line, that makes it... This guy.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to do. Well, good afternoon. I am chair of the Judicial Council, and have just been on the Judicial Council this time around for the past year. But I have been on it off and on for quite some time now. In any case, I want to thank you for letting me talk about the Judicial Council, because we are an interesting and different council than any of the other councils that we have in our organization. We are in the Constitution, and I want to mention from the standpoint of the Judicial Council how really, really, totally important it is to know your Constitution. And I think everybody up here has pretty much emphasized that, but it is extremely important. That's really true in any organization that you belong to. And I wanted to give one historical note in light of the fact that we lost a former member of our Judicial Council, Tracy Walton. It won't move, it's too connected. The judicial power of the association is vested in the Judicial Council, whose decisions shall be final, and I'm reading that from the Constitution. Either COBB-NMAHI shall be present for all sessions of the House of Delegates and sit in an identified section of the House. We do not vote. We cover such things as membership and the obligation, rights, and privileges of membership, controversies arising under the Constitution and the bylaws, and under the principles of medical ethics to which the National Medical Association is a party. When there are controversies between two or more state societies or their members, we deal with those. We deal with controversies between state and local societies or societies of another association or their members. And the Judicial Council has the appellate jurisdiction in questions of legal procedure, but not a fact in all cases which arise between the state society and one or more of its local societies, between local societies of the same societies, and between members or a member and the local society or state society, and also between members of different local societies of the same state societies. And the period of time within appeals to the Judicial Council may be taken to be limited to 6 months following the date of the decision by the constituted authority of the state society or the date of decision of the Judicial Council. And we are also the body that passes on applications for membership in the National Medical Association as provided in Chapter 1, Sections 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the bylaws, and specifically as it relates to bringing in new societies. And we also have jurisdiction, of all questions of ethics and the interpretation of the laws of the association. The Judicial Council may, at its discretion, investigate general professional conditions and all matters pertaining to the relations of physicians to one another and to the public. We also have the authority to request the President to appoint investigating juries in which to refer complaints or evidence of unethical conduct. The point of the matter is that we are the body of this organization that determines final answers as it relates to constitutional issues. And that is why I said it's a very different body within our organization. We also like to mention again, it's really good, which she has already said, because I meant to bring my Robert's Rules of Order, that you also remember that we also need to refer to Robert's Rules of Order when we are in question of anything in our procedures as it relates to the Constitution.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll. As Dr. Clear comes to the podium, I want you to know that just your presence here signifies your intent of developing your skills, and over the course of the next several months, our leader, Dr. Lenore, will gather the information, not just from this leadership forum, but we'll gather information to help you hone those skills, help you develop the leadership qualities that you think you have, and we'll give you constructive feedback if we feel that there are things that you can do better that would put you in a better light to make sure you get elected every time you run for office. Dr. Clear, we want to know at the local level what sort of things.
No, I don't need to sit. I don't need to sit.
Okay. Yeah. What sort of things you find that are important with regard to developing leaderships to move through the ranks from the local level up to the national level?
Thank you so much. So I am not a past president, nor am I current president of the national organization, but I am the immediate past president of my local society, Manhattan Central Medical Society, as well as current Region 1 chair. And I always like to think Region 1 is one for a reason, but so I'd really like to thank Dr. Lenore and Dr. Vivian Penn, who, you know, when I brought to them the idea of we should really have a session on leadership from the past presidents. They were really receptive to me bringing up that idea and really seeing it to fruition. So I really like to thank them for even considering me to be a part of this distinguished panel, because as I said, I am not a past president. What I did like to do is, first of all, because we're going to make this interactive, we've been sitting here and listening, so how many in the audience are current leaders in their local society or their local affiliate? Okay, and how many regional chairs? I know who they are, but good, they're still awake. So I'd like to introduce right now some of our local leadership on the regional level and in the local level in New York, just so they can give their perspectives on what it is to be a local leader. And we want it to be interactive, so please feel free to come up to the mic and give your perspective. So first to my, left, Dr. Rachel Villanueva, who's the past president of the Manhattan Central Medical Society and current vice speaker of the House of Delegates. And we already heard how important the House of Delegates is to our leadership structure. And she is a candidate for Speaker of the House of Delegates this year. We also have Dr. Denise Asifur Ajayi, she'll kill me for the pronunciation butcher, who is current leadership. She's our resident member of the Manhattan Central Medical Society and future president of Manhattan Central Medical Society. And she's been really an engaged young physician in our local level, and she really is doing a lot in the Young Physician Committee, and so she'll speak to a little bit about her experiences in that. And to my right, Dr. Leah Applewhite, who's the president of the Clinical Society of Queens and Long Island, sorry. And obviously, you know Dr. Price. So I think I'd like to pose the questions to the panelists, and they can speak right from their seats. So how were you able to, as a young person, really become involved in the NMA? That's for Dr. Villanueva, and Dr. Denise can answer that question as well. How were you able to get engaged on the local level, and how does that lead to future leadership in the organization?
Thank you. So I was actually an SNMA national president and SNMA, very involved in SNMA. So for me, coming to NMA, it felt very natural. It was, I was going to be involved, and there really wasn't a question about it. My first NMA meeting was, as Dr. Bailey spoke about, was the San Antonio meeting, and I came as an SNMA representative. So I feel like I've been involved in NMA for a really long time. I am very fortunate because I think my region really helped to encourage me to become a leader. I have so many people who served as mentors and who really encouraged me to become a leader in the NMA. Dr. Carolyn Barley-Britton, Dr. Von Chris Veal, there was Valentine Burrows, who was also at the local level. Just individuals that, if I missed any, I don't think I missed anybody. Dr. Patricia Hart is here as well, and just people who are really encouraged me to take leadership roles, and that I wasn't too young to take that role at the time, and that my voice was valuable, and what I had to say was valuable to the organization. So I think I was just very fortunate to have those people. There was also, I really distinctly remember I think it was one of my very first regional meetings, and if you don't know, Region 1 always goes to the Caribbean, Memorial Day weekend, somewhere in the Caribbean, so it's a great regional meeting. And so we often have people from other regions coming, but at this particular time, it was a past president, Dr. Randall Maxey, who I met. And he just was so inviting and so engaging, and really, again, was another mentor, he just met me, and he was like, what do you do? And, it was my very first regional meeting. I really didn't know much about it. And so I think it's important to find people that will encourage you. I will say that as a younger person, which I no longer count as now, but I was before, I think, if you're interested, get involved. I also served 7 years as the chair of the Council on Concerns of Women Physicians. I think that was my very first introduction into being a leader here. And I think just don't be afraid to get involved. If you're interested, if you have something to say, the NMA is just a wonderful place. You just meet people from all different backgrounds, and an experience that you'll never have somewhere else. And so I think just if you're interested, be active. Don't let anybody intimidate you into not being a leader, because I think all of us have something important to say, and that's what makes the NMA so great.
Hi, everyone. So I would say that my experience with NMA kind of stemmed from medical school. I'm glad to see two of the people from Michigan I think were really instrumental in keeping a lot of us engaged, Dr. Jeff Clark, Dr. Lonnie Joe, who are here. I was at University of Michigan for medical school, and they really just embraced all of the medical students there and really, I think, emphasized the value of NMA and SNMA. And I remember distinctly, as a graduation gift, they actually gave everyone a membership into NMA, all the graduating medical students. So you really had no excuse to be not involved when you started residency. And in New York, I've been really fortunate with Dr. Claire, Dr. Britton, Dr. McWilliams, who, despite a very busy residency, I'm a fifth-year urology resident now, so time is not very pleasing to me right now. But I think that I've really realized the value of NMA. I've really been able to take advantage of that value, and I think more people need to see it. So I think being involved at a local level, I'm the social media co-chair for our MCMS chapter, and then I'm also a social media chair for our Region 1. And I think social media has been a great venue to really get the word out there of what we do, what our mission is, and why Black physicians are important, why the mission of what we do is important. So I think that being involved continues to reinforce why we need to be engaged, and it's allowed me to hone in on my leadership skills that I've then been able to bring to various aspects of my residency at Columbia. So I think just really seeking out mentors. All of the physicians in our MCMS chapter have been extremely supportive, whether I have the time or not. They really push me to be the best and to put those skills at the forefront. So I'd say for any resident, don't think you don't have the time for it. Obviously, only commit to what you can, but it doesn't take much, and even the smallest task really goes a long way at the local level.
Excellent. You can see she's well trained. And then I'd like to direct our question to Dr. Applewhite, just speaking on the local level, really how you were able to engage African American physicians in their community, be involved in organized medicine. We know we're often pulled in many directions because of our jobs and our other commitments. So how we were able to engage physicians in Queens and Long Island to be involved.
Thank you, Dr. Claire. And part of what I wanted to at least speak on just for a few minutes regarding the local level and engaging Black physicians is the need to reach out to existing groups and make an effort, even if it's a small effort, to continue that communication regarding the fact that the NMA is still here, that there is leadership that's available, as well as trying to negotiate individually. What I've discovered over the last year or so is some of the joy of reaching out to people one-on-one, contacting folks who are working in other areas further out on Long Island, and also working with folks in Manhattan. Some of the difficulties is certainly the time that we need to do other things, as well as understanding that some of the infrastructure at the local level in terms of time to contact sponsors is incredibly difficult. The point of continuing those numbers and the contact information, trying to reach people one-on-one has been somewhat helpful, as well as just recognizing some of those challenges. That being said, I think that all of us individually and those of us who are thinking about working at the local level shouldn't be discouraged by some of the challenges, and to continue to move forward, even if it's small pieces at a time, but just to maintain the fact that you're reaching out, you're maintaining those groups, and you're reminding people of what's at the local and what's at the national level.
So I think what Dr. Lenore had for this part of the segment is really to talk about some of the best practices of what people are doing locally and on the regional level. So I'm going to take the prerogative, and hopefully I won't get in trouble for it, or I'll hear about it later, to really open up the floor to if anyone wants to share some of their best practices on the local level, how they were able to engage physicians locally as well as regionally. That would be helpful if anyone feels empowered to get up to the microphone and speak on behalf of their local level. And please say who you are and your local chapter or your region.
I'm Dr. Louis Hargett, and I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, and we are the Falls City Medical Society. Kentucky as a whole is not a very large African American population, and Louisville is the largest city by far with the largest number of African American physicians. And as Dr. Brown mentioned earlier, the biggest problem that we had engaging people was relevancy. And, everybody is told...
Repeat that one more time, I'm sorry.
Relevancy.
Relevancy, yeah.
They're in the AMA, they're in the local, in the majority societies, as well as...
Or take it off the stand if you want. Yeah, thank you.
The biggest problem that we had was engaging people and getting them involved with the local chapter of the Falls City Medical Society.
Right.
And the whole question was, well, what does it offer us, that we don't already get from our local society, from the majority society, special society, et cetera. And so, when we started getting people involved as African American physicians, all of us the same, bringing them in from different, environments. We got the majority hospitals that they're affiliated with. We saw a big, huge influx in our membership, and we continue to grow. And then when I could get them to come to meetings and, local meetings, state, and then the regional, and especially here, we got them by the end. So, it's just but it's a process of trying to get them engaged.
So I think what we've also learned in the local level in New York, and when I took over, it was also equally a challenge to find out, who our members are, who is in our community, and really just get them to be engaged. But as Dr. Bright already mentioned, know your organization, know your local community, know the challenges that they are, and be able to speak to the mission of the NMA. And what I always did is I always say Manhattan Central Medical Society is a local affiliate of the NMA. I never stop saying that we are a part of the NMA. In every communication that we provide, in every email to the members, we're not just some random Joe Schmo local society. We are a part of the NMA, and that's extremely, extremely important, one of our best practices. So I don't know if Dr. Lenore is signaling me the time. Okay, just checking. Go ahead, Dr. Walden.
Yes, I'm Dr. Linda Walden. I've been president of the local and state of Georgia Medical Association, currently Region 3 chair. And the successes that I have had that I'd love to share is simply engaging your members. They've got to be engaged. I give them assignments to do. I don't just say, come to our meetings. Yeah. I want you to talk about this, that, or the other that's going to be beneficial to our members. Also, we have a lot of banquets and programs, and I try to get the state and national presidents. They have come. Dr. Price has come. Several of our presidents from the national have been our keynotes for our organization, for our banquets, and it has been a phenomenal success. We reach out to the current historically black colleges, Albany State University, and started an NMA chapter. We mentor those students. We invite them. In fact, I called them up and I told the advisor, I don't care how many you have, how many do you have, 25 pre-med students, I want them all to come to our banquet. When those kids saw 100 and some odd black physicians in the audience, which they had never seen one before, they were just in awe. And that just made a difference in them excelling and doing well in school. So it makes a difference. You gotta engage people. You gotta let them know how much you need them. Don't just say, come. Tell them why you want them to come. And that has been the success on a local, state level for me, and now hopefully becoming more regional. We have a newsletter we send out so everybody knows what's going on, even if they can't come to all the meetings. At least they know what's happening. And we want them to give us input. We don't want to just tell you. You tell us what you think we need to do. And when people feel like they're important and they're making a contribution and making a difference, they will stay connected. Thank you.
Awesome. I think Dr. Villanueva had a comment.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I would say also when I was local president, just for us, we made a really concerted effort to involve medical students and residents and fellows. So they're always welcome to come. They don't have to pay for the meeting, and that's always on the flyer. Residents and medical students, always on our correspondence to our members. And I think that's really important as we think about the future of the NMA, is how to engage younger physician members, even at the medical student level. I think that has to be a big push for us as far as the NMA is concerned. And it really, at a local meeting, it doesn't really take that much, as Dr. Walden was saying. It's just a little bit of effort. It's that personal touch. It's that calling that person that you've met at a meeting. It really does make a difference.
Dr. Lenore wanted to make a comment. Before he does, I just want to say one thing. We also give the students something to do. They volunteer, they participate in something specific, not just attending. I give residents, she calls it the voluntold, right? Voluntold. Please need you to do my website again. Those kind of things, give them directives so they know exactly what to do. Dr. Lenore had a comment.
Yeah, two things. One is I want to congratulate the Atlanta chapter for its award as the large chapter of the year, as the president and I'm particularly proud Dr. Joy Foster's here. St. Clair Miller is the small chapter of the year award, and have developed a number of very ingenious and actually profitable programs, and there's a lot. I would have a lot to say if she were part of that. But I would say this: no matter what position you're in, regional chair or local chair, hire some staff person. Pass the hat, beg, steal, borrow, but get some staff to help you do your job. If you try to do this out of your office, with you typing this and type, things fall through the cracks. Do the very best. Make that one of your top priorities. You got to have staff. If you don't have staff, then you just aren't going to be able to successfully negotiate your program. So don't try to do this by yourself in a busy practice. Make that one of your number one priorities, to have at least one staff person who can do something.
I just want to say that Georgia State uses the executive director, and so does the Region 3 chair.
Right.
We use the same executive director. That's who helps me to get things done.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to ditto that. We also have an administrator for Manhattan Central, and we also have an administrator for the region. So, Dr. Brooks.
All right, thank you. Past president of Miller Lawrence Medical and Dental Society in Golden State. And what we did at at the Miller Lawrence is, first of all, we involved the dentists. So we have Miller Lawrence Medical and Dental Society, A. B, we determined to have a signature event every year, a scholarship and recognition dinner. And what we do is we recognize physicians and dentists in the community. It turned out that there are a number of African American physicians have been practicing 30 years, and we recognize them with the Trailblazer Award. They got up there and almost to a number said they had never been recognized by anyone anywhere in a formal manner. We do it to raise money, and we found that people are willing to donate. Over the 11 years we've been doing it, we've raised almost $200,000 that we've given to scholarships. And our last one, our keynote speaker, was Maxine Waters. So what happens is when the word gets out, by doing something, whatever your idea is, it seems to catch on. So it was the students, it was the money, and recognizing those that have trailblazed for us.
Yeah, I also like to, I added that for those in the local level, really making sure your state society is equally engaged with you. In New York, we have a unique structure. We have a very active state society, which won Local Society of the Year twice, not this year, but twice in a row. Do have to honor that, Empire State Medical Association. So, and also re-engaging our scholarship program. We also re-engaged our scholarship program. Dr. Britton appropriately advised me when I took office, and so, we really re-engaged that, and that's a way to honor your students. So go ahead, Dr. Renee.
On that note, I'm going to start off by announcing that the scholarship fundraiser tomorrow night from 8 to 12, you can purchase your $75 tickets at the registration desk. It is a dance party with DJ Steve Silk Hurley. So if you haven't gotten your tickets, make sure you get your tickets.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sounds good. Renee Settle Robinson, podiatric surgeon, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I served for 7 years as president of our 90-year local society. I'm currently serving as chair of the newest section of the National Medical Association, Podiatric Medicine and Surgery section. I'm just going to take a moment to brag that the Atlanta Society, that's being recognized as the best NMA society this year, is headed up by one of my colleagues, also a podiatrist, Dr. Adrienne Sneed. To speak to exactly what I'm supposed to be speaking on. Locally, when I served as president, I made sure that every month, at least once a month, if not more often, I would go and show up at the offices of people in the Milwaukee area who had practices but never seemed to come to the local society meetings. And I would ask them for their participation, for their dues, and identify how much we need them. And if they needed a personal invitation, consider it delivered. And for that reason, some of those people that were like in the woodwork would come out of the woodwork sometimes. So sometimes that personal visit makes a big difference, maybe more so than a phone call.
Yes, great. Thank you for those ideas.
Hi, I'm Joy Foster, president of Sinclair Miller Medical Association, and I want to thank Dr. Mike Lenore, who's been one of my mentors. And one of the things that I found successful for, because we are all so busy, is to use the internet. For instance, our board of directors, we aren't often able to meet face-to-face. So what we do is we have virtual meetings. We use Zoom or whatever you want to use, and we do that. We have set dates. So for instance, all of our members know that our membership meetings are held monthly, the third Thursday. We do not alter, regardless of who the president is. And I heard someone else say, engage your members. You've got experts in your society. Get them to speak and get them to ask who's going to sponsor the meeting. All of our meetings are sponsored, and they cost roughly about $2,000, which usually is cost prohibitive. So all of our meetings this year have been sponsored. The other thing we do is, in far as engaging residents, and that was a really great suggestion as far as asking residents, we've created a resident liaison position. So not only to have that person then get trained in the local leadership and the discussions that we have, but also as a way for us as an organization to reach out to the next generation. And we've even created outreach programs, mentoring programs at UCSF. And as someone just said, a resident, they saw we had about 60 in attendance, black physicians. They had never seen that many physicians at UCSF, and even some of the black physicians didn't even know each other existed.
Right.
So there are lots of ways, and I think what of it is not only being creative, but also acknowledging, as it's been said here, that we're all leaders, and you know what, you don't do it by yourself. It's like you might have an idea, and you enroll everybody in your ideas, and then everybody else has great ideas, so.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Foster. Unfortunately, Dr. Lang will be our last comment for the sake of time, but hopefully someone, I can't write and talk at the same time, has been writing down these best practices, maybe Dr. Knight, who's usually the note taker of the group. He'll yell at me later. So really we can copy voluntold. We can copy down these best practices and really provide them for all our local societies. So Dr. Lang, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Khadijah Lang, Family Medicine, Golden State Medical Association President, past President of Charles R. Drew Medical Society.
And Dr. Lang will be honored for her leadership by the National Medical Association for Physician of the Year, I believe. I forget if I the wrong title.
I just wanted to say that one of the things that I found was really helpful when I was president at the local society, and I have continued doing as president of the state association, was to get NMA to sponsor CME programs. That allowed us to be able to use our own. Many of the organizations that were really willing to sponsor came along trying to tell me that I had to use their speakers, and I said, okay, fine, they need to be an NMA member or a Drew Society member. And then, oh, we don't have any. Okay, well, if you're a major corporation and you don't have anybody that looks like us, and you have as many of us as there are in every specialty, and you don't have anyone looking like us, then we don't need you to sponsor it, because we require the person that speaks to us to be a member of the NMA or our local society. And so I found that that going to NMA and getting them to sponsor our speakers who are perfectly qualified from within our own local societies or state societies to come in and give us CME lectures at our local meetings helped to build attendance, and it made it easier for us to get programs that were valid, that had value to the members and reason for why they should come out, because it allowed us to get CME and see and hear our own speaking. So I found that to be something that's a very great benefit of the NMA, and I think we should take more advantage of the fact that we have a wonderful CME program that is willing to work with the local societies. So that's my 2 cents to add.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to turn the program back over to Dr. Lenore, and I really want to thank him for the opportunity. I look forward to an excellent program again next year. Thank you.
Point of personal privilege, and Dr. Bailey, you had something really important to say. Something's going to be earth-shaking and change the dynamic of the meeting. But go ahead.
Absolutely. I think along that line, Bailey, President 113I, learned this year, I think, increasingly the value of joint meetings. We actually had a joint meeting between the Winston-Salem group and the Greensboro, North Carolina group. Had the opportunity to comment that we actually honored Randall Morgan, who's a past May president. Had him give a lecture and had a dinner. We found out then that the 2 groups actually had not had a joint meeting in some time. Probably over time in North Carolina, I think probably for a variety of reasons, there had been a splintering of groups for a variety of, I think, of leadership reasons. But it looks like the entities that sponsor and provide support, not just drug companies, but other entities, probably began to give decreased funding, because I think we're being seen increasingly in NMA as having smaller and smaller turnouts, because I think of smaller and smaller numbers. So I think for future leaders, this is a group I think of increasing future leaders, we probably want to consider finding ways to have joint meetings at the local and regional levels. And increasingly we have, I think, joint meetings of regional meetings to increase the likelihood, I think, of higher sponsorship. I'd also comment that I think Khadijah made the point on CME. It also, I think, enhances the likelihood, I think, for our ability to enhance the academic component, I think, of that reach piece as well. So I think those are some considerations, I think, for some of the challenges we're going to have, I think, going forward.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank everybody who participated today. This is our first meeting, and I think we've all learned a lot of things about where we need to prioritize our next meeting and what we may need to do better. I think it's really important to recognize that leadership in the NMA is available in a number of different places. We didn't talk about the regions, and we didn't talk about the scientific sections. I actually came through the scientific section, chaired 3 of the sections: pediatrics, allergy, and community medicine. And I learned a great deal, because we're one of the great scientific meetings in the world, and you can certainly come through that process. I would say to you that the greatest moments I had was as a local society president, reaching out to other organizations and putting together programs that I thought would be good for the community and good for my group of doctors. I think if you want to move through the National Medical Association to positions of leadership, not because you can do a better job, but you can do a different job, then you have to have your eye on the prize. You have to understand some of the structural things about the organization, show that you can serve, show that you can follow. Because if you can follow, then obviously you can learn how to lead. So I'd like to thank all the past presidents who took the time to participate. I'd like to thank Camille especially for putting together this portion of the panel. And we hope to see you again next year, bigger and better.